In this week's In-Ear Insights, it is the time of year when social media is all the rage, all the chatter is about it. And this week, let's talk about social media listening. There's two basic types of social media listening. There's listening for yourself, people talking about you and responding to them, obviously putting out fires where you need to. And then there's listening in general for topics of conversation to understand what your industry is thinking about, or specific topics and what people are saying on those topics. So, Katie, when you think about the applications of social media listening, obviously listening for yourself is important, right? If someone said something good, something bad, you want to know that. But talk more about what you look for as a stakeholder from social media listening tools, agencies, etc., that you think can provide that next level of value, because the basic listening is sort of cover your butt stuff, right? Like, okay, let's make sure we didn't do something dumb. How do we take social media listening from basically a cost center to a value center?
You have to go deeper than just the surface level. And so I think, at least in my experience, and admittedly limited experience with social listening tools, a lot of it, you're absolutely right. A lot of it is just reputation management of, how many mentions did I get this month? Okay, great. I must be doing something good if people are talking about me. Are they saying good things? Okay. Are they saying bad things? I need to respond. So that's fairly straightforward. That's a good use case of social listening. But what I'm looking for, and the reason is because Trust Insights is not a household name. I'm putting air quotes around this if you're listening. It's not a household name in the sense that people are like, oh, Trust Insights, they do X. I know I need to hire them. We're not a huge brand. We're very small, for all intents and purposes, like a boutique agency. In terms of size and in terms of recognition. And so when I think of social listening and the use cases, I'm trying to go deeper into the conversation and not just people who were talking about Google Analytics, because Google Analytics right now is a hot topic, especially with Google Analytics 3, Universal Analytics, being decommissioned in July. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's trying to get someone else's business in terms of setting up Google Analytics 4. Google itself is dominating the conversation with whatever it's rolling out. And so it's not that I want to follow the conversation of what people are saying. It's that I want to understand how people are talking about it, what questions they're asking, what questions are going unanswered by Google and other experts, so that that's where we could maybe fill in some of those, spots and say, well, we have the answer to that question, or we can help you with this, or even just understanding the terms and phrases and, slang, or, the language people are using when they're talking about these things, so that we can mirror that. And when people see the content, they immediately go, okay, this resonates with me. So that's part of it. And then, part of it too is I want to understand what we don't know. And what I mean by that is, so I'm using Google Analytics as an example. We think we're answering, the right questions, but we may not be. So I also want to understand. I want to learn what we don't know, what people are struggling with that we aren't aware of, because we are well versed in Google Analytics, so we may not see it from a different perspective. So those are the two other use cases that I'm looking for when I think of social listening.
And based on the experiences you've had so far, how are the tools and the techniques and things, how are they delivering or not delivering those two cases?
I don't think they're delivering, personally. The reason I say that is because the type of reporting that I think I'm looking for is not out of the box for some of the systems that I've had experience with. And so, sure, I can get a count of keywords that show up on any given day or week or month. That doesn't help me a whole lot. That just tells me there's a lot of conversation. What I'm looking for is more of that qualitative, what is the conversation? Or I want to actually find the people having the conversation and dig deeper and talk to them and ask them more questions. And that's just not something that the tools have been able to do for me, or give me enough data to pursue those channels.
It's interesting you say that, because what you're asking for is the opposite of what these tools are designed to deliver.
That might be why I'm having such issues with them.
Well, think about it, right? If you take your average social listening tool, right, it is designed to show you what's hot, right? What's trending. So I'll just bring up an example here for those who are listening. I'm bringing up our friends over at TalkWalker, the TalkWalker conversational monitoring software, and I just put in our domain name. And what you see is it sorting by the most engaging, highest reach content. Like this is the stuff that the biggest mentions. And if I switch this over from just the domain name to something like Google Analytics, use Google Analytics 4 as the example. Again, what it's going to surface is it's going to surface the most popular, well-known content, the stuff that people like. If you're looking for white space, if you're looking for blue ocean or green fields or the poor analogy of your choice, this is not going to give you that because by default this is giving you the most crowded spaces, the most busy topics. And so you're right, the tools, you would have to sort to scroll down to page 5 million in the tool to get to all the stuff that people are asking questions, and there's no answers.
And that, it's interesting because that's exactly it. I'm looking for, it's not that the most popular content isn't useful. It is useful to understand what is resonating, but then that to me says, okay, this topic has been covered 6 ways to Sunday. I don't need to keep talking about this. What else isn't being talked about? And so maybe this does tell me what I need to know, but I'm just not looking at it correctly. But when I think of these tools that provide reporting, my first thought with reporting is don't make me work that hard. You are the system meant to provide the report. And if I then have to guess at what's not there, then the report has not done its job. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I will disagree with you on that because reporting tools can't do that.
Which is why I have trouble with reports.
Exactly. Well, we always talk about the 3 whats. What happened, so what, now what, right? All the reporting tools can do what happened.
Sure.
None of them can do so what, right? None of them can connect the dots. Now, a good agency partner should be able to do that. One of the things we strive very hard to do when we provide reports to our clients is to say, here's what this means, right? Hey, this went down, here's why. Or even better, this went down, and here's what you need to do to fix it, because if you don't, it's going to keep going down, and you don't want it going down.
Right.
That is something that's the value add that a good partner should be bringing in on top of the reporting, because the reporting by itself, you're right, it's just here's what happened, and that's okay, but it's not amazing. I had this experience over the weekend in one of my lucid moments when I wasn't hacking up a lung. We were looking at the people who were participating early on in the Save Warrior Nun campaign, right? Because that was the things of the day. And then the people in the last 30 days. And you can get the data, the report from any system. But what I wanted to know was, what's the difference? What's the difference between the people who've stuck with the campaign the whole time versus the people who've come and gone? And it turns out, there's some very obvious things, like they have the campaign hashtag in their bio, and they use it a lot in their content. They tweet 16 times more than other people and stuff like that. They also have slightly smaller audiences. So from that, the recommendation that I was able to give to the campaign is, we need to hardcore focus on the loyalists, the people who have these campaign hashtags, and make sure we don't lose any of them, because they are the ones that are going to keep this thing going. So calling them out in other tweets, featuring their work, highlighting them in the daily newsletter, all these things to retain that loyal audience. And so from the social listening provides you the raw materials, but then to your point, you need the extra analysis tools that are not built in to extract the value and say, this is what you need to do.
And I think that that's where I'm at a disadvantage, because social media is not my area of expertise. I mean, I've been very open about that. I am not great at social. It's not my favorite channel. And I'm not invested in it the way that I would like the company to be. And that puts us, Trust Insights, at a disadvantage, because when I look at the reports that come out of these tools, I'm very much the person sitting there going, I don't know what to do with this information. I'm very much the client looking for that partner who can tell me, here's what you need to do. Very rarely, Chris, do I say, I just want someone to tell me what to do. That is just not my MO. I am all about being the one who's telling, not being told. But in this instance, I want someone to tell me what to do. And I don't know. And so I guess this is an interesting question in terms of social listening. So let's say you're a small business, and let's say you're trying to DIY pretty much everything, which is not an uncommon scenario. How do people like me figure out the so what when it's not our area of expertise? Like, we have the tools, we have the reports. Chris, what would you recommend someone do with this information to try to make it valuable when they don't have that agency partner to do the value add?
Number one thing is ask your customers, what if anything, do you want from us via social media? Right? The answer may be nothing. The answer may be customers saying, I am so sick of social media. I don't want to be on it anymore. I just want to be in a place where I can talk to trusted colleagues, like the free Analytics for Marketers Slack community. If you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, you can join the group over there. People may say, yeah, I don't want anything on public social media. And that's a valuable insight in and of itself, is that your audience may just not be there, right? Asking people, what do you want? Period. Right? What can we provide you? When we ask this to our Slack community, a lot of times it's knowledge that I can't get somewhere else. Like, what do you have to share that isn't in the public? It's kind of like where we started the social listening conversation. Like, what is out there that isn't being answered? We do this a lot with things like taking apart academic papers and things. When we did a walkthrough in our Slack community of Google's attribution model, how it works and things. We do a lot of stuff on this podcast of taking things apart and how things work. We're going to do something on ChatGPT's new API and how it works and what we can learn from it. So those are the kinds of things that our community has said to us, this is what I want. Now, there's always the Henry Ford problem, which is, if he once famously said, if I asked customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So there is always that element of, what do we know that the community needs that they don't know that they need yet? And obviously we've done things like create courses for measurement strategies for agencies, Search Console, etc. But when it comes to social listening, it really is looking at what your audience wants, and can you provide that, right, on social media, or should you provide it on social media? Because there's always the aspect of, if it's something really valuable, probably just don't give it away for free. And then, to what you were saying earlier, looking at what's popular right now in a topic and saying, is there a unique take on it that we have value to add on top of what's already known? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is, yep, it's all been said. There's nothing else to say here.
So it sounds like, if I'm, someone, and admittedly I am, someone who's just not as invested in social media, but I'm trying to make it work, the social listening, I really need to understand first, like, why am I going after social listening? I probably need to have a really strong purpose as to, what it is I'm trying to accomplish. And so, this always comes back to the same starting point of the 5 Ps. So what is the purpose? Who are the people? What is the process? Which platforms? And how do I measure performance and success? And so with that purpose, and, as I was going through the social listening tools, I admit I struggled to put together a really solid use case other than, I just want to see what's in the box, which sometimes is okay, but I have to be okay with wasting time and resources to do that. And so, when I was starting with the purpose, I started with the user story, which is, as a persona, I want to so that. So it was, as a business owner, I want to understand the conversations happening on social media so that I can participate, which is a good starting point, but still kind of weak, because how do you measure that? Like, did you participate or not? Congratulations, you get a gold star. You need to understand, does that participation lead to something? Does it lead to more awareness, more traffic to your website, more customers, more conversions, more loyalists? And so I was able to recognize that my use cases were pretty weak.
Yeah, and I think you've hit it exactly that. You really do need to have some kind of outcome, right, to benchmark it against. Even if it's just, if you were to look in, say, your attribution model and say, okay, well, we want to see social media, move out of from the bottom to within the top 10 referring sources, right? That would at least be better for a new user conversion. So that would be something that would fit that purpose better. So in this case, LinkedIn last month for Trust Insights was 3.56% of our new users. That to me would say, hey, there's something there, right? There's something worth doing. So maybe as part of that purpose, we say, okay, well, we want to, as a marketer, I want to improve my visibility on LinkedIn so that LinkedIn represents 5% of new users to the Trust Insights website. Like that's pretty tangible. I think that makes sense. And when we look further down the list, we see things like Facebook. Facebook's on there. We've decided we're not going to do business on that platform, but that's fine. But Slack is pretty low on here for this past month, and in past months that's been stronger. So we might say, for this coming month, as a marketer, I want to improve Slack's contribution to new user participation by 5% so that it generates more new users traffic to the website, or whatever other objective. But having that outcome in the user story makes it a little easier to measure.
But to your point that you were saying earlier, this doesn't tell me the so what. So it tells me that LinkedIn is a channel that's starting to show up in terms of new users. And so I, as someone who's maybe further away from this data, you would hand this to me and I'd be like, okay, but like, what does that mean? What do I do? Do I do more on LinkedIn? Do I do the same? Do I find, like, what exactly do I need to do? And this goes back to, someone, for the love of God, please just tell me what I need to do. And that's what these reports aren't doing. And that's where I think I'm struggling with the whole social media piece, because it's the channel that I know the least about.
Right. And this is where I would say you warm up your brand new ChatGPT Plus account and start with the prompt like, you will act as a social media manager. You have expertise in writing thought-provoking conversational pieces about marketing analytics for LinkedIn. You have subject matter expertise in marketing analytics, Google Analytics, management consulting, whatever. Your first task is to write 5 short posts ready for LinkedIn about social media listening, as an example, and have it do those first drafts. And as long as they're coherent, right, start copying and pasting them and scheduling them one a day, and to see if you can provoke some of those conversations to get people to actually have a discussion with you on LinkedIn.
But that's only one part of it. You then need to actively participate. You need to participate in conversations that aren't yours. And this goes back to what I was trying to understand from social listening in the first place, is where are the conversations that I need to be participating in? And I feel like that's just not what I'm getting from the reporting. So I feel like we've come full circle.
Correct. The reporting will not tell you that. What you need to do, and go back, if you head on over to the Trust Insights YouTube channel, go back to our live stream about a month ago on the social media algorithms. So we did an entire episode on deconstructing LinkedIn's algorithm. To make the most of those networks, you've got to understand how they work, and then you can craft a strategy around them. And again, a listening tool is not going to know that. A listening tool has no idea what works and what does not work. Your agency partner should know those things, or your internal social media team should know those things and should be able to tell you, yeah, here's how to find 5 people in the space that are talking about the thing. With LinkedIn, it's fairly straightforward. You can search for a specific hashtag and then start jumping in on conversations where you see an opportunity to add value. Also, you have your list of 5 to 10 people that you interact with regularly on LinkedIn, friends, colleagues, and things. And again, you jump into those things. You follow a pretty commonly known program of, just spend 15 minutes twice a day just going through conversations and things to see where there's opportunities.
And I think that is the key. You can automate it to a point, but at the end of the day, you, the person, need to be actively participating. And all of the social listening tools in the world can't mimic that for you. You still have to do the work. And I think, so I think social listening is a good starting point for a lot of people just to sort of understand the landscape of what's going on a social media platform in terms of the things that they care about. But that's what it is. It's a starting point. You need to dig deeper. And I think that that's where my frustration with these tools lie is I haven't had the time or the expertise to dig deeper. But now I know after having this conversation is that's exactly what I need to do. So I just need to prioritize it if I'm seeing through our data that social is a channel that we need to care about.
Exactly. And for anyone who is a social media manager listening, this is why many times your reporting kind of falls on deaf ears, because it doesn't tell stakeholders the so what, and it doesn't tell them the now what, which is here's what we're going to do to get more of what we want and less of what we don't want. The tools will not do that. Do not rely on the tools. They cannot do that. They cannot possibly understand your business. They cannot understand the unique employees that you have on your team and the capabilities they do or don't have to bring to the table.
And I think that's going to continue to be the differentiator between agencies that succeed during this uprising of AI versus agencies that kind of fall short is, yeah, you can automate a lot of things. AI is going to write a bunch of stuff for you, but at the end of the day, you need to understand, like if you're an agency working with me, for example, understand that I want to know that the data exists, but I'm more interested in you telling me what I need to do about it. So don't waste my time showing me the data. I'm going to trust that it exists. I want to know what exactly I need to do and how to measure that success. And if you're just giving me automated reports out of the system, I'm probably going to give you notice because that's not helpful to me. It's not valuable. And so work with, your customers, work with your clients and really understand, yes, we can automate 99% of this, but what is that 1% that's going to make a huge difference in your life?
Exactly. It's funny. I love the software that we work with, like Talkwalker, for example, is one of my favorites, not because their interface is great or their reports are great, because I don't actually use the interface at all. I just use the export button because I know that for me to get what I want out of social media data, I've got to put it through my own tools. And so, one of the deciding factors for me as a choosing a vendor is how good is the data export. I don't really care and I'm sure it's heartbreaking to the software engineers who've spent their lives assembling these software products. But like, no, I have to be able to work with the data in its raw form to get the insights out that I want for my specific use cases. Because again, for social listening, it's about what's being said and to your point, Katie, what's not being said. And there's very specific types of natural language processing you can do to get at that again, it's not built into these tools because literally almost no one knows to ask for it. It's like the secret ingredient that like 5 chefs in the world know exists. And they're like, okay, we're just not going to tell anybody that this particular type of truffle exists.
Well, I'm putting them all on notice. I'm asking for it. I want it. I don't like truffles, but I want whatever the other thing is.
So with the social listening efforts that have been done so far now, and with what we've talked about, what are you going to do differently now from now on?
I honestly don't know. I think I'm going to decommission some of the automated reports that have been filling up my inbox because they're a distraction. I keep looking for that, bright idea inside these reports, and it's just not going to come. It doesn't exist. So I think that'll probably be the first thing that I do is rethink how these tools are being used for me personally, and whether or not they're the right thing to answer the question. And it sounds like they're not. And so from there, I'll come up with a different plan. But it sounds like social listening isn't the thing that I need.
It is not in its raw form. It is
Mhm.
it is ingredients, right? And you want someone to have cooked you dinner, and then that's the disconnect.
Mhm. Yeah.
Every day, a new truck of ingredients rolls up into your inbox, and you're like, "Will somebody please just make me a freaking steak already?"
Yeah. I'm not the one you want cooking dinner, so I think that that's a great analogy.
Oh boy. If you've got some stories about how you're using social listening that you'd like to share, pop on over to our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where you and over 3,000 other marketers are asking and answering each other's questions every single day. And wherever it is you watch or listen to the show, if there's a channel you'd rather have it on instead, go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, where we have the show on pretty much every platform that still is doing podcasting. And while you're there, please leave us a rating or a review on the channel of your choice. It does help to share the show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.